or not. We'll try and go across to our senior executive editor, Abhishek Kapoor. Abhishek, this is exactly what we were basically discussing. But before I take this question to you, in fact, we're now getting in the latest visuals of the French President Emmanuel Macron. Remember, there's also bilateral that is essentially scheduled. Abhishek, while we stay with the breaking news now coming in with regards to insertion of the paragraph on Ukraine war, this is what we've been discussing over the last 24 hours, that while we're talking about India becoming the voice of the global south, the fact that this is going to have a reflection in the Delhi Declaration, we cannot perhaps brush it under the carpet that for the G7 countries, the Ukraine war happens to be the biggest concern. And in fact, almost all of the leaders before taking off from their respective countries, at least the G7 countries, they had made it abundantly clear that a clarity on as far as the Ukraine war is concerned, and the fact that trying to build some sort of consensus with regards to Ukraine war is paramount to them. Will that perhaps impede the proceedings?
Well, Shravan, the fact of the matter is nobody is brushing anything under the carpet. Remember the Bali Declaration? The 255 words in the 10,000 word document, the joint communique, clearly mention a couple of things with which even the Russians had no problem. So, for example, the Bali Declaration said that this is not an era of war, which was India's contribution, Prime Minister Modi's contribution, accepted. Nobody disputes that this is not an era of war, because if you have wars, you can't progress. Also, the Bali Declaration said that the war in Europe is causing a lot of disruptions. Everyone accepted that. Also, the Bali Declaration said that the manner in which the war is panning out, it's creating human tragedy. Nobody objected to that. But what has happened is, from Bali to New Delhi, the year that has gone by, or the 10 months that have gone by, a lot of water has flown down the Danube, a lot of water has flown down the Dnipro River. And today, incidentally, in fact, we are talking on a day when Russia is carrying out elections in the new territories that it has captured, the Donbas republics. And the West really does not want that. We have seen West also escalating. So the sanctions regime that has been put in place and tightened, the sanctions regime, in fact, has gone on to China also. And that is why the Chinese and Russians have come even closer, what is called dragon bear. And that is the reason why even those very basic simple words acknowledging that Europe war is causing strife, it is causing disruptions in food, fuel, fertilizer supplies, is not finding acceptance. Essentially, hardening of positions has happened on both the sides, the West and the China and Russia, and China and Russia on the other. And that is the reason why this deadlock, insofar as joint communique is concerned, it has not happened in any of the ministerials that have taken place over the last few months. And it seems that even now we are stuck. Remember the fourth Sherpa track meeting which happened in Manesar. Essentially, the Sherpas are the people who, on behalf of their leaders, thrash out the joint communique. Couldn't come to a unanimous decision on whether a joint communique could be issued. And the Sherpa track meeting went on for one extra day. And despite that, now we are told that there is a possibility, because remember the voices that have come in. So, for example, US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan saying that we are going there in the spirit of compromise. Prime Minister of Britain, Rishi Sunak, saying that we are going to support India's ambition. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, of course, hardening his position insofar as Russia is concerned, but saying that we are there to help India. South Korean president saying we are there to help India. So obviously, if India leans over its friends and the friends say, okay, fine, we will going to find a way out, maybe a way out could be found. For example, by saying that the war has had consequences which everyone has to deal with. Now, if that really happens, then fantastic. At least we have some move forward. But if it does not, then obviously you have the standard operating procedure, which is that there is an executive summary and a chair's statement. We are still sort of stuck somewhere. I think it would ultimately depend on some diplomatic innovation. Because remember, like in the case of Bali, so in the case of New Delhi, Russia happens to be a friend of India. They are not going to sabotage everything just because they are in a fight with the West or a standoff with the West, because India also has to prevail somewhere. And that's where our relationships really would come into play. Hopefully they would, on both the sides. On the side of G7, the countries that really want direct mention of Ukraine, and on the side of Russia. China, of course, is playing the spoiler, but then that's how it is. Nobody can do anything about it. Even the Americans are sort of just trying to deal with it. And we are going to see that kind of geopolitics and that kind of world playing out over the next few years and decades, perhaps adjusting with China's very belligerent rise. So that's how it is so far as joint communique is concerned, Shravan. As we spoke, of course, French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived. He's the last one to come in almost after the first session is over, and he would be joining in the second session. In between, there are bilaterals. We are just waiting, I believe, for a press conference by UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as well.
Well, that's something that one would be looking forward to, with UK Prime Minister addressing the media in a short while from now. But let's also look at some of the other sticking issues, the contentious points. Joining us on this broadcast is Burzin Wakmar of SOAS